Before the invention of chemicals, our world was balanced. Nature had a way of keeping everything in order without any outside help. When chemicals were introduced, the natural balance was disrupted. These are some hand-picked stories that illustrate the devastation caused by the spraying of chemicals in the form of insecticides and pesticides. Our first story comes from Alabama, the cotton country.
My name is Josephine Schneider. I live in Alabama and I go fishing every day to support my family and supply my bait shop. Up until last summer, I could always find fish of all different shapes and sizes in our local creek, Flint Creek. It all started when the government decided to authorize the spraying of chemicals by planes in our district of Alabama. At first, there were no bad results. Then the mighty rain came down in torrents and brought with it destruction. You see, when the chemicals were sprayed on the cotton fields, there wasn't a big problem. But the rain came down and washed them chemicals sitting on the cotton fields down to the creek. And there it sat, contaminating the once pure creek. The fish didn't even stand a chance against the man-made weapons of mass destruction. The next morning after the storm, I went down to the creek to start my daily routine. I checked the temperature of the water, and what I found next was astounding. The water level had raised 6 inches. I walked up and down the creek, and I saw fishes swimming in circles on the surface. I'd never seen this type of behavior in the fishes. I started walking again to see how extensive the damage was. I stepped on something squishy, and I said, "Oh Lord Jesus, it's a fish." I looked up and down the creek and I saw fish, lines up, some still alive, some dead, on the shore of Flint Creek. Through my eyes, it looked like some of those fishes threw themselves out of that water in desperation to get out and be free from the chemicals. Pretty soon, word got out about the damaged creek. Us local folk was not pleased with the absence of the fish, 'cause they was how we earned our living and supported our family. Scientists were coming to Alabama from all over the country to study the poisoned water. It was pretty amazing how much damage the chemicals were causing. One day, I had a marvelous idea. I took my son's pet goldfish and put them in my fishing cage. I then took the cage and put it in the creek. They were all dead within a day.
The second story is from a young child who lives in Hinsdale, Illinois.
My name is Marie Williams. I live in Hinsdale, Illinois, and I'm 13 years old. When I was 7 years old, I moved here from New York City, and my favorite thing about Illinois was the bird song. When I was sad, I would swing on my swing set and listen to the birds. Sometimes I would pretend I was one of them and I could fly away. When the state started to spray elm trees, there were some effects that I noticed personally. I woke up in the morning one day and realized that no birds were singing. I didn't know why, because we were told they would always be safe and that the government protected birds. I know now that chemicals killed them, but imagine being 7 years old and having people try to explain what was happening. The absence of birds really got to me. It made me sad. I expected them to come back and sing to me. They didn't come back. I got used to the silence, but I still miss them a lot. It hasn't been the same since the birds went away.
The last story comes from a farm near Sheldon, Illinois. My name is Joanne McCabe, and I live with my husband and 2 children on a farm not far from Sheldon, Illinois. 2 summers ago, 1,400 acres of land were sprayed with Deldrin, and last year, another 1,600 acres were sprayed with the same chemical. The purpose of the spraying was to get rid of the Japanese beetle. Instead, we saw other animals taking the impact of the chemicals. First, we saw the birds dying around the fields. We didn't know what was causing the deaths of these animals that we always had large numbers of in the area of Illinois. Later, we found out that this was because the birds ate the poisoned insects and were thus poisoned themselves. Then came the squirrels and the cats. Now, my family had 5 cats, 2 grown cats and their litter of 3. My children adored the cats. When the first kitten fell ill and died, they were devastated. Then, in time, all the others died in the same way. This was because of the chemicals. We weren't the only family that had this happen. It's disappointing that the use of chemicals is being so abused. It really isn't worth it if the chemicals kill everything in their paths. This concludes the presentation of evidence regarding chemicals and their effects on the environment.